Welcome to Solved, the political discussion show for people with attention spans and those looking to develop one. My name is Jay, and our other resident solvers are Amanda, Deon, and Erin, who will offer a read now.
Hey there.
Hello.
How's it going?
Collectively, we produce the venerable, indispensable, not to mention award-winning podcast Best of the Left, where humans, that's us, curate progressive media on a chosen topic, creating episodes that are greater than the sum of their parts. On this show, we use those same curation skills to pull together stories and ideas that help us solve some of society's biggest problems, because if we don't tell you how to think, someone dumber on the internet will. Before we get started, a quick note about Charlie Kirk. I already gave a lengthy commentary about that on Best of the Left, so you should check that out. Basically, we think violence is wrong, and we think it's important to constantly point out that real information and established statistics shows that far-right violence far outstrips left-wing violence. Many on the right don't seem to understand that, and I don't even think that they're necessarily lying about it or anything because of our information bubbles. I bet they literally haven't heard of most of the cases of right-wing plots against Democrats and liberals, and they certainly haven't either looked up or been told about the statistics, but it is very important to set that record straight any chance we get. Today, we are going in a different direction. We are looking at the culture and informational wars from the 100,000 foot perspective, zooming way out to better understand the cultural dynamics that shape the way we take in information and the nature of new information mediums like social media to be used by bad actors. But first, get excited because I am going to subject you all, including three on this show with me, to some supposedly satirical article headlines from the Christian right publication, The Babylon Bee, because I think that when we go through a whole series of their articles, a sort of image begins to appear that you don't necessarily get from just one or two. And I like to learn about our conservative counterparts through satire, because it's better than reading actual fascist screeds. Is everyone ready?
Maybe.
We'll see.
They're excited. That's about as excited as I was expecting. So starting off, just remembering that this is satire and not a faithful description of how they really feel, supposedly. The first headline is, "Man wants however many deportations are needed for him to no longer have to press 1 for English." Just be clear, there's no twist in the article. It is exactly what it sounds like. So the satire here is like, it's silly and irrational to feel that way. Anti-immigrant feelings have gone too far. They're absurd. That would be a version of satire that could work.
Uh-huh.
Hard to tell, genuinely hard to tell what they mean. Continuing, but speaking of conservative opinions going too far, the second headline is, "Gone Woke, new Jurassic Park movie has a woman in it." And I have quotes from this one. It says, "Wokeness claims another victim," said commentator Glenn Beck. "The once proud Jurassic Park franchise, long known for killing off the black male characters quickly, has now stooped so low as to put a female on screen," which I find confusing. I mean, are they not poking fun at wokeness? That concerns about wokeness have gone too far? Like, I don't know how to interpret that as satire any other way. Actually, it gets better. It says, quoting a moviegoer, it says, "They want to make you believe that a woman could fight a dinosaur, which is insane. Everyone knows only a man can fist fight a velociraptor. Wokeness kills everything it touches."
Does seem, yeah,
Right?
I don't know. I give up.
Like, wokeness fever is out of control. It's got to be. Actually, here's the real capper. At the end, it says, "At publishing time, movie executives had sought to reassure audiences that they spent more money on the CGI velociraptors than what they paid the woman actor."
Who could know?
Who's the target? Who's their audience now?
I don't know.
So the last time we did this, I was like, are they writing articles for the left to draw in people who want to think that they're the onion. And then once they get there, find out they're not. Like, I don't really understand.
It's almost like they're doing the Colbert Report version of Colbert,
Mm,
where they're taking conservatism and ramping it up to a level of
Yeah.
satire that can trick people into thinking, well, they're satirizing the right. But or in no, that no, conservatives got tricked into thinking Colbert was satirizing the left.
Yeah.
No, you're right. You're right. Yeah, no, conservatives just thought Colbert was right on
mhm.
when he was satirizing the right. No, okay, it still broke my brain. But like, whether they mean to be or not, they are pointing out that wokeness fever is out of control and pay inequality is real. So we'll leave that one there. Continuing the trend of poking fun at irrational conservative ideas, maybe this one, gay question mark. This man just remembered his best friend's birthday. And the birthday rememberer in question says in the article, it's not gay to remember your best friend's birthday. That's just a flawed cultural norm, guys. Please just cut it out. I'm not a homosexual.
So he is gay? That's so the satire is that he is
What?
gay for remembering his.
Unless they're entering the healthy masculinity world. I don't know.
Well, so exactly, like one option of satire here is that toxic masculinity that perceives anything sensitive or emotionally intelligent as gay is absurd. And so that's the satire.
Mhm.
That would work. However, I will point out that the rest of the article goes on to really lay on the gay tropes quite thickly. So he's got an effeminate voice. He compliments a man's haircut. He likes Coldplay. There are others I'm forgetting. And the article lays it on as like, well, his gayness is further confirmed by all these other stereotypical things he does. So then I'm just like, no, I literally have no idea what the joke is. Actually, the only conclusion I came to is that stereotypes about masculinity are funny whether they're true or not. I think people who like stereotypes, who like joking about stereotypes, genuinely, it's not that they think that they're true, although they probably do often, but it's they don't care if they're true because stereotypes are just funny.
I mean,
We've come to find that there isn't really a coherent worldview necessarily on the super far right or even maybe just the right in general. So the Babylon Bee not making sense might be the perfect strategy to get that reader to read
Mm.
their, because it doesn't make sense. And we're trying to put some logic on it, but it isn't. It's not logical. It doesn't make sense. It's impossible to tell what they're actually satirizing. And I think that might be the point. Maybe I'm giving them too much credit.
My instinct is they think they know what they're satirizing, and I'm not sure they're correct about themselves and what they're writing.
Isn't this humor on the right? They think it's hilarious, and yet it's not for large audiences. Like it is
Yeah.
very niche.
I mean, this is why I like reading right-wing humor, is to try to understand, because it usually has a logic, not my logic, not what I would think makes sense or is true, but like for someone to laugh at something, it has to trigger something genuinely in them. And so understanding what that is, it provides real insight into people. Like what makes people laugh gives you real insight into how they think.
have you considered, though, that we're just humorless people who hate funny things? Because I think a commenter
Yes.
from a while back when we did this last time informed us that that's actually what's going on.
We did ban comedy for a while, but it's back. And that's
That's right.
it's really hurting me personally that it's back. I didn't want it to be back. I wanted it to be gone
Yeah.
forever.
Nobody likes to laugh.
I like to keep an open mind. So I will definitely continue to consider the possibility that I'm just humorless. Are we ready to pivot to their perspectives on women?
Sure.
Let the comedy ensue.
So this is in reference to the Sydney Sweeney jeans ad. The headline is, "Wokeness defeated. America returns to Christian roots of objectifying women to sell crap."
I just want to know where the joke is aimed. Like where, who, what's where's it pointed? Where, like, and then maybe I would think it's hilarious.
So, as I pointed out, they are a Christian nationalist conservative publication. And so here's a quote I think does shine some light. "Woo, we're back to selling women's bodies," said local conservative Dan Millen, celebrating. "All the bad wokeness is gone, and corporations are back to using cleavage to sell things. American family values have carried the day."
Okay. No, I can
This
see where
actually-
the overlap is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This might be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Or close.
The better of them.
Yeah. Under this one, I wrote, "Actual satire accomplished. Funny and true. No notes."
Oh boy.
All right. Continuing on women, this one's closer to politics. The headline, "Republican Party searching insane asylums for next popular female politician."
Wow.
Amanda, what's your instinct on that one?
Can you read it again? I'm actually
Yeah.
I want to make sure I didn't miss
Yeah.
something there.
Republican Party searching insane asylums for next popular female politician.
Okay, so it's bad and sexist, and then maybe also acknowledges that some of the women on the right in politics are a little unhinged. I mean, like, is that what is going on there?
So I will admit, the first time I read it, I scanned past Republican. I just scanned to like, they're looking for
Mhm.
crazy women to be in politics because women are crazy or something like that. No, not at all. Here's a quote. "We've gotten some of our best ladies from the loony bin," said one Republican official. "They might be bat
Wow.
poop crazy, but they get a lot of attention and become really popular. We've tried to go the more traditional route of finding women with the best and brightest conservative minds and leadership skills, but that just hasn't worked out nearly as well as rounding up really loud, crazy broads who say outlandish things in public."
Okay.
I just subscribed to the Babylon Bee.
They got you.
Yep.
They got you.
I was like, I ranked this lower. It's not hitting the same notes as the one before.
No,
No, it's-
sure.
It's still not good.
Yeah.
But also there are people like Marjorie Taylor Greene out there.
So-
I don't know.
I think if you look, okay, the direction it's aimed, it does make sense. They're super conservative Christian. They don't want any women to be politicians. So they're mocking Republicans for having women politicians, period. And it does help that a lot of them do seem unwell.
Yeah, and actually they probably, let's see. Well, again, I'm guessing a lot here, but Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert have done some, let's call them quote unquote unchristian things that have been in the media. So I wonder if it's more about that and they're just calling them crazy because it's fun to call women crazy. And that's a larger patriarchal thing and not just shit on the right.
Yeah, definitely could be. And I would just point out, like, they probably wouldn't admit to not wanting women in politics,
This is a good way to do
but
it.
it's like they would prefer Phyllis Schlafly to be in politics. But if we can't have that, let's point out that women are kind of crazy. Yeah. Okay, continuing on women, but honestly, we're just going back to the classics now. Women's parallel parking added to 2028 Olympics.
Oh my God.
Jesus Christ. All right. That one's just straight up fucked up.
Yeah.
Which is so funny. Like, I am from an area where people parallel park. And who do I see struggling? Men with their big old trucks.
Giant ass truck.
I literally walked over to this dude because if he didn't get it in one more try, like I was going to have to take over. It was embarrassing to watch. Now that would be a fun sport.
I have a friend whose daughter just turned 16, and we were talking about insurance rates because he has a son who's 17. He's like, it's a whole lot better for my daughter than it was for my son because insurance companies know that women are better drivers than men. That's like
Interesting.
statistical fact. They don't do that because they're feminists. They do that because of money.
Right. They're running on the data.
Yeah.
The money. Yeah.
And I can back that up because I looked up those statistics today because of this headline. Uber to begin offering riders choice of woman driver or good driver.
Jesus. Okay.
Wow.
I know. And, you know, it always ruins a joke to explain it.
These are just old, tired.
But it's coherent. This one makes sense. I know what they're
Yeah.
doing. They're being sexist
Yeah.
assholes for their audience.
Right.
I get it. I get where
Makes
they're coming
sense.
from. Not
It's on
funny,
brand.
but
Yeah.
on brand.
But they're so tired. Oh, God.
Yeah. But remember, they're against objectifying women. Denigrating's fine. But
Oh, yeah.
objectification,
Yeah.
that's where they draw the line.
Because they don't want women to be seen.
Also, just remember that stereotypes are funny regardless of whether they're true or not. In there. Quick pause, though. I did get interested because of all the stereotypes that are being used. I tried to do a search for a like famous, well-known stereotype about men, which is provably false, so that we could get a sense of turning the tables and like what would that be like, because I couldn't think of one offhand. And, you know, if we made jokes about that, could we imagine that Babylon Bee writers would find that stereotype funny, since it would almost certainly apply to them? And here's what I came up with. The stereotype, which is provably false, is that men are emotionally clueless and lack empathy, which I found fascinating. So here's like the quick AI summary that pulled data from Wikipedia and the National Institutes of Health. It says, objective measures of empathy don't show an inherent male deficit in experiments using brain EEG responses. Men and women show similar empathic reactions. Gaps seen on questionnaires shrink or disappear once social expectations are accounted for. That's the key detail, and which keeps becoming more and more clear. Reported gender gaps in emotional intelligence and empathy are small, inconsistent, and strongly influenced by motivation and social desirability rather than biology. Socialization pressures lead many boys and men to suppress sadness and anxiety and to channel emotion into anger, which affects expression, not capacity for empathy. So like, that's the one thing I could come up with, that like, what does society think about men that is sort of a stereotype that turns out to be wrong? And it is the thing that conservative publications like the Babylon Bee police harder than anything else to maintain the incorrectness of that stereotype. So at least they're consistent. They're maintaining stereotypes on both sides. It just so happens that there are a lot more stereotypes about people who are not white guys. This one's a little bit more coded. It's referring to the Trump administration bombing the boat of alleged drug smugglers in the Caribbean. The headline, more winning, Trump bombs ship smuggling 30,000 kilos of pumpkin spice. Amanda, you've been on this pointing out for years that the only thing you need to understand about conservative dislike of pumpkin spice is that women are vocally enthusiastic about it. And so it is therefore feminized. And because it is feminized, it is therefore bad.
Yeah, things women like are bad.
I've got a pumpkin spice candle going right now in the house. It smells
That's
delicious.
yours, that you bought.
Yeah, it's great. I love that smell. Because I am
gay?
Question mark. Apostrophe. Yes. Exclamation point. I guess. I don't know.
Oh, I was like, is it the candle or the specific scent? Both.
The pumpkin spice one is what tipped me over into wanting to do this segment in the first place, because it was clarifying for me. We had a recent episode about how office jobs used to be perceived as masculine until women started doing them. And now they're being denigrated by the same people who would have like loved Mad Men, the Mad Men era, unironically. They're denigrating office jobs as being feminized. And so it just is the circle of patriarchy that women come and do things that men do, and then men aren't allowed to do those things anymore. I hadn't even thought about it in this frame exactly, but like, I guess I'll be careful. It's not that men are in more of a cage than women, but men are in so much more of a cage than they realize. The number of things men are not allowed to do because women do them, according to the patriarchy, is baffling.
Yeah, you can't have milkshake.
Like drink pumpkin spice flavored things.
That's right.
God, no wonder they're
Yeah,
angry.
no pumpkin spice, no milkshakes. Yeah, you need a treat now and then. You're not allowed.
No straws.
Oh, no straws. Yep. Can't have nice things, guys, because of the patriarchy.
Okay, we have finally made it to the end, and we have come full circle because they're not good at coming up with new premises. So remember, we started with man wants however many deportations are needed for him to no longer have to press 1 for English. And we end with man voting for whichever political party will get this video of male Vikings cheerleaders off his social feed. So this is sort of combining the admitting the irrationality of their bigotry, but also being bigoted against anything feminine is still kind of cool.
I just want to clarify. It's just Vikings, right? Like all other male cheerleaders, fine. But it's specifically the Vikings ones, right?
I think so.
Okay.
I think that is the rule.
That's clarifying for me.
And just to make that joke even more funny to me, is that if that Vikings male cheerleader is showing up on your social media feed over and over again, because you're the one that wants to watch the male cheerleader.
Gay? Question mark?
The algorithm knows you
No.
better than you do.
Oh, what does that algorithm know about you? That is a hard truth right there.
And that's why that joke is hilarious, not for the reason they thought it was.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's a good one.
Yeah, I'm like, what party to vote for? How about the actual like social media gods who are showing you exactly what you want to see?
Yeah. I mean, talk about callbacks. People have been voting Republican to try to suppress their gay urges for decades. I've been aware of those stories for a long time.
Yeah.
All of which brings us to our first article. America has turned dancing into a culture war. This is from Vox, and the article begins, the first ever cheerleader, according to USA Cheer, the governing body of American sport cheering, was a man from Minnesota. The sport was born in 1898 when a male student at the University of Minnesota spontaneously got up and led the crowd in a cheer for the football team. Men have always been part of cheerleading. Multiple U.S. presidents, including Ronald Reagan, were cheerleaders in college, and male cheerleaders have been part of the NFL sidelines for decades. End quote. So, the scandal, in case you need more clarification, is that the Vikings added 2 male cheerleaders, and conservatives across the country absolutely shat themselves in anger over the feminization of the country.
Wasn't Bush a male cheerleader?
Oh, yeah.
I think he was. Yeah.
Okay.
In college.
Just needed to clarify that while we're going down this.
Yeah, I don't know why they only mentioned Reagan. Yeah.
I mean, I think the key line was after a recent social media promo, the range of people, like, that's what gets people going. Because as we just talked about, the algorithm feeds you what will enrage you or that you'll love or whatever. And like, that's our whole culture now is something gets shared. And, it's not just social media. Obviously, the psychotic obsession with gender roles in our political sphere, that's completely supplanted normal brain function and reactions. But it's those two things together that work hand in hand to get something that really is nothing to be what everyone is talking about and has enraged half the country.
And it works every time.
Yeah. Every time.
Every time.
It is astounding.
I just don't know how the left got called snowflakes. Such a silly
Well,
thing.
projection.
Yes, projection. But this is such a silly
deep
thing
projection.
to get like genuinely mad about.
Yeah.
And in defense of male cheerleaders from a, I don't know, I guess, misogynist point of view, there are few things in the world that are more athletic than gymnastic dancing.
Mhm.
Go watch Simone Biles do anything on floor routine and tell me she's not
Mhm.
one of the most athletic people ever. I have a friend whose daughter got a scholarship to Mizzou to do cheer. Easily the most athletic person I've ever met in my entire life. Also, broke her orbital bone because she got thrown too high and didn't get caught, because it's also extremely demanding physically and dangerous.
Yeah.
Calling it feminine, okay, because a woman is involved, I don't know, but it is
Mhm.
athletic. It is a very athletic endeavor.
I do think like we're reliving discussions or things that have already taken place. Like Bring It On.
Yeah.
What that was 90s,
The
early
movie.
2000s. Yeah. The trope of haha male cheerleaders was throughout that. We're just reverting back to making fun of that.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, look, the male gaze part of cheerleading, I was kind of interested to hear how relatively recent that is from this article. I didn't know like when that became a real thing. It was like the early 70s and it was Dallas Cowboys and like it went from there. But it's interesting to have people get angry that the entertainment has to be my like sexual preference when I watch football. Like I am demanding that I get to look at half naked girls shaking it, and don't you dare throw a man in there. You're ruining my sexual fantasy while I'm watching sports. And I'm like, okay, dude. That tells me a lot more about like your personal frustrations and issues than anything else.
And in this case, we're talking about two men, right? Two men on the squad, the
Yes.
Minnesota squad.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there are all the other scantily clad women that still exist, but you can't
Mhm.
stop watching the two guys.
Right.
You should maybe think about why that is. Discuss with a
Yeah.
therapist, maybe your wife. Have a conversation about why you can't stop staring at the men dancing.
So to be fair, I didn't think that's where this conversation was going to go, because the evidence seems to be not that conservatives are closeted homosexuals who secretly like watching those guys, but that they are so hung up on policing gender that they are enraged when they see gender roles be subverted.
Oh.
That
Mhm.
seems to be what it is.
Did they miss like seeing that they were wearing pants? Because that might clarify things. They like don't have to wear the standard uniform. There are pants that can be worn.
Right.
But I think this, what's the source of the reason why they have to defend these gender roles so much is because of this fear of
Mhm.
not conforming in any way, and gay question mark being asked about you, because that, I guess, is the worst thing to a lot of those guys.
Well, and I think these are convenient conversations. I agree with what you're saying, Jay, that it's about the policing. But you have Eisenhower, who was a cheerleader and also fought in World War II. So there's a lot of masculine energy in Eisenhower still, despite the cheerleading fact. And maybe that is scary because there is a duality. You could be good at dance, acrobatics, and also killing people.
Jesus.
Sorry.
Holy shit.
Or maybe he cheered in a really super manly way, and that's what makes it okay. I think that's what they would argue.
Texas A&M doesn't have cheerleaders; they have yell leaders. It's a bunch of men that yell, and they're all macho, but they're
Oh,
men.
yelling's okay,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, that's much more masculine. Yeah.
I would argue, aside from the psychosexual issues that men interested in policing the gender binary have, it's probably just more about control. I mean, dividing the genders and strictly regulating what anyone according to their gender is allowed to do is just broadly a method of control. The patriarchy and people implementing it have controlled women and kept them down for a long time now. And that has become normal. And so what is normal feels good and what is abnormal feels bad. That's a normal human reaction. And those things go hand in hand. Controlling women is normal and feels good to these people. And subverting that is scary and feels bad at the same time.
There's the other aspect. I can't remember if it was mentioned in this article or just something I thought of. Cheerleaders don't make any money. Professional cheerleaders for professional sports teams make no money. And it's
Yeah, there was the documentary that highlighted that about
and
Dallas Cowboys.
you can justify that because they're women. Go back to the Babylon Bee joke. Ha ha, women don't make any money. If you put men in that role, then wait, now do we have to pay them more because there are men? And then you have to think about why. Wait, hang on. Why aren't they making money? I have a small anecdote with this. I had a friend who became friends with a Memphis Grizzlies dancer, and it's a competitive job. There's a very small squad. It's about the same size as the basketball team. It's limited to very talented professional dancers, and they're not making minimum wage because the amount of time that they have to spend practicing, which is similar to the amount of time that the basketball team has to spend practicing, they're making no money. And granted, nobody's coming to the game to see them, but they are part of the experience when you're at the arena. But we don't pay them. And it's easy because they're women. Like, they just go dance. That's all you're good for. And if you put men in that role, then you have to rethink, wait, maybe it is a skilled job. Maybe they are highly skilled labor. And that is a component of it too, because I mean, men wouldn't just do a silly job. Men are skilled and important.
I mean, in college, a fair number of people that I danced with went out for the Washington Wizards team and danced with that team while in college. And the expectation, like some of them had to quit because they were expected to get their nails done, get their hair done. It was like expenses just to be on the team that the team was not going to pay, in addition to paying them next to nothing. And like they're young women, right? Like that's part of it too. It's definitely exploiting young people who aren't ready to stand up for themselves in a workplace.
So beyond NFL cheerleaders, this article takes it in a new direction. It says, if the NFL is becoming destabilized and woke, then where else can we look for a reinforcement of that gender binary? Conservatives seem to have latched on to college sororities as an alternative, specifically the sorority rush dance. This year, multiple rush videos have gone viral in right leaning social media corners, with posters on Twitter and other platforms claiming both the videos and the women in them for right wing culture and framing them as wins in the culture war against liberalism. And aside from this Vox article, several weeks ago, I read this Atlantic piece. Is anyone actually mad about sorority rush dances? And here's the operative quote, referring to one of those viral videos, claiming that liberals hate the women dancing in the video. It says, the only thing that's missing is evidence of seething libs. Search around social media and you might be surprised how difficult such reactions are to find. In fact, I couldn't find a single one. When I asked Kinsey, the poster, where he got the idea that people were angry about the sorority recruitment videos, he didn't point me to any specific examples. He noted that many people replied to his posts saying that they weren't mad about the TikTok dances. But he said, I don't believe that.
Right, of course.
That's it.
Yeah, drumming up outrage that is...
Yeah, in a total absence of any evidence and evidence to the contrary, they'll go with their gut.
Have any of you seen the recruitment videos that they're talking about?
I only read what Jay had found, yeah.
I would guess that the bulk of the audience is either people in that age range or creepy middle-aged men that like to look at younger women. Yeah, the outrage on the left is probably like manufactured in the way we haven't been exposed to that. Like that is something coming across their timeline and their bubble. And yeah, like feminine people, whew, we are so outraged by that.
Okay, that makes me feel better because as a terminally online person, I didn't really understand this part of the story. Like, this was like the male cheerleader thing. I'd heard
Mm,
about that one. This one, okay,
yeah,
women
no.
dancing for sororities. That seems normal.
Were you not outraged?
I yeah. Well, that's. I mean, not to derail this and go on a tangent. I want to keep it pretty limited. But the scariest part of the Charlie Kirk situation to me is the outrage on the right, completely detached from anything related to facts on the ground, and how that just is churning and continuing now that new information's coming out. That doesn't even matter. They have created outrage out of thin air,
Mhm.
and it's just based on inertia. And I mean, they have strawmanned an entire 66% of the population. We all fit into a bubble of the other, and the other, they are bad. And it doesn't matter if, you know, even one of us was upset about the sorority dance video. We're all upset about the sorority dance video.
Mhm.
That's just the way it works now. And it's pretty scary because reality seems to be the tether that held us together a little bit, and now they're just making their own realities. And this is
Mhm.
a small example of that, but that's what's happening. They can create outrage out of nothing.
Yeah. And I just want to also mention the evolution of feminism because the right wing, whether they know this or not, is almost besides the point. But the image of the left that they want to put forward and the image of feminists that they want to put forward is that we want women to be ugly and not attractive at all and wear burlap sacks and like they just believe that is what we want. They believe that we want to also tell women to live that way, that anybody who is attractive or yeah, pretty in any way is like someone we hate, which is absurd. And actually I was just reading an article about a meeting about women's health that Gloria Steinem held in her living room in New York. And they had pictures, and like everyone in that room is stunning and dressed up and like looks lovely. And like, I'm like, well, if you couldn't get any more close to like a group of feminists than this, Lupita Luongo is there, like, yeah, we are not what you imagine us to be. But it's really easy to try to co-opt and pull people into your movement by saying, oh, the other side just hates anything good or anything pretty or anything nice, and like, see, they're extreme. And, feminism has evolved a lot and there are lots of different perspectives, but mostly what we have come to is you do you. That is the point. Like ultimate freedom to do whatever you want and be however you want to be is where we have kind of landed, at least for now. And I hope that's the way we go. And like, yes, there are criticisms of exploitation of people's sexuality or their bodies and whatnot. And that is totally valid. But in terms of your personal preferences, you do you. That is the point. You are in control of your body. You have agency over your body. And that is what the left believes. Nobody is trying to say you need to go wear a burlap sack and look ugly on purpose. That's just not a real thing and needs to be said, apparently.
Right. But it's what they came up with because it's the mirror image of what they actually do say.
Yeah.
They don't say you do you. They say do what I tell you to, which
Mhm.
is dress up in a way that I like for my sexual
Mhm.
gratification. And if you don't and you refuse to do that, then you're bad.
Mhm.
And so for the left to say, yeah, you don't have to do that. You don't have to listen to those people. You don't have to dress like that if you don't want to. They just flip it on its head and
Or you can,
claim that.
I mean, that's the thing. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
I feel like they have to have these like fake outrage stories though, because otherwise you would hear what we're actually mad about and I don't know, might fall victim, if you will, to the left's agenda. Because you'll hear us being mad that people are losing their healthcare coverage, that hospitals are shutting down. Like you will actually find things that you agree with. Like I don't give a fuck about sorority dances when the world is going to shit. Like the US is
Mhm.
actively transferring wealth to the top 1% while the rest of us fight over male cheerleaders and sorority
Yep.
dances. No. And
Yeah.
it feels very chronically
It's-
online. Like, the only way I think you walk away thinking a leftist actually feels this is if you're in a bubble where you're only interacting. Like, how many people do you actually think you have conversations or you read comments from people? Like, what percent of the overall population is that? It's a very small, like, you're not reading billions and billions of comments from all these different people. So I just feel like this is a bubble thing that, of course, you can capitalize on.
I just wanted to bring it back real quick to kind of the evolution of women being involved in athletics because I, years ago hadn't really been thinking about it very hard. Like, when did they start allowing women to get involved in gymnastics or whatnot? Because that was like very much, if you look at the Olympics from the turn of the century, it was a male thing, right? And so years ago, I had this very great boss who would occasionally go to a local flea market and pick up books at the flea market that reminded him of coworkers. And so every now and then he'd come in with a whole bag of these flea market books that were, 25 cents a piece or something and give them to one of us. And so I got a delivery one day and and he knew that I had danced in my school years. And one of the books was called Tumbling for Girls, which I thought was the best title ever. And it was like a 1940s book with photographs and stuff in, throughout the book showing like how girls specifically can tumble. And of course, they're all poor things. They're all wearing skirts with like maybe little shorts underneath, right? And they're, being told to tumble this specific way for the female body because obviously it's inferior and different than, male bodies. I will always think of Tumbling for Girls when I think about cheerleading and gymnastics because, this was an evolution and it was absolutely male dominated not that long ago. So this shouldn't be that hard to get around, but obviously it's about much more than that.
So, coming to our next topic, which harkens back to something I said in a previous episode, we were talking about science and the brain drain in the US. And I talked about anti-intellectualism, amongst other things, as being part of these like natural forces that happen to humanity. And the context of that was I learned from my brother many years ago that it's almost like a psychological trick he uses, and now I use, that when I think about sort of terrible things humanity does, destructive things or cruel things or whatever, that to think of humanity almost as a natural force takes the edge off a little bit. Because even when people are making individual decisions on how they want to act, collectively, we are a creation of nature and we are what our context and our biology and our cultures that we had no hand in developing made us, right? Like we all showed up here and sort of fitted in wherever we did, but the context was already here. We didn't just fall out of a coconut tree, is what I'm trying to say. And so Jonathan from New York is a longtime supporter of the show, had a comment about that, which I want to respond to. He said, I also liked the Solved episode about science, but I was struck when Jay called anti-intellectualism a natural force. Yes, there probably is some natural tendency, but the amplification and inflaming of it is not natural. I heard someone note that the term backlash should often be replaced by organized counter-mobilization. There is a natural tendency to resist change, but backlashes we generally see are intentionally engineered by people or corporations with bad intent. Calling them backlashes hides what is really going on. Same for the anti-intellectual movements, end quote. And I absolutely take all of his points, and I don't disagree with the premise he's coming at. We're just having a little misalignment of terms and exactly what we mean by natural. And what I thought of was it's like trying to divide humans from the natural world. People say that all the time. On one hand, you can understand what someone means by that. But on the other, you could argue just as easily that there is no divide. Like literally, humans are part of nature. Any division we perceive is an illusion that we create for ourselves. We are part of the natural world. and everything humans do has sprung from nature de facto, right? And so that is kind of more what I mean. That's why I said at the top of the show, like, we're zooming all the way out, 100,000 foot view as far as you can get, because anti-intellectualism, the demagogues who collude to weaponize it intentionally, as Jonathan, makes the point. He's making the distinction between what happens without intention versus what happens with intention. And I'm not saying that either of those is true, but what I mean by it is I'm zooming all the way out, and that basically everything is natural if you choose to look at it that way. Now, the problem could come in a political discussion. One might get the wrong impression that I'm saying something like, well, it's natural. Things happen, they come and go. Don't worry about it. There's nothing to be done. Things that are natural are not to be prevented or avoided or anything like that. And that is not at all what I mean. I mean, we do a show about politics. We clearly think that action is worthwhile. And it's more that by understanding things as natural forces, it's just the metaphor I like. Choose your own if you like something else. But seeing things as natural forces sort of helps them become understandable as predictable. So, for instance, energy from the sun creates high and low pressure, which is why there's wind. That's a natural process that is predictable. Economic insecurity creates desperation, which makes people more vulnerable to demagogues and authoritarian ideologies. It is predictable. We can watch it play out. So, having clarified that, this all brings us to the next item I wanted to bring up. It's just one small thing that David Frum, of all people, said in a recent podcast episode that caught my attention. The episode was titled Why America Isn't Rome and Why That Matters, from the David Frum Show from The Atlantic. And, he's a conservative leaning dude, but he's also anti-fascist. So at least for now, he's on my team. And so in this introduction to the discussion about Rome, he says this about fascism. Quote, fascism is backward looking in its goals, but modern in its methods. There are many forms of authoritarianism that aren't fascist because they're backward, they're traditional. If you meet in some remote part of the world a tribal chief and people obey him because they feel the gods wish them to, that can be pretty authoritarian, but it's not fascist because it's backward looking. Fascism in its methods is as modern as tomorrow. In the 1930s, it used the new technologies of the radio and the airplane. And in the 2020s, it uses the new technologies of today. Indeed, fascists are often better and faster at adapting these new technologies than their more traditional minded adversaries, end quote. So again, if you, go along with my metaphor or choose your own, I am thinking of the rise of authoritarians and the context in which society allows for ideologies like authoritarianism or fascism to arise, with this idea that Frum points to, that fascists are better at using technology than their tradition-minded adversaries, which just means like people who are kind of okay with the status quo. That's like people who think democracy is a good idea. That's a tradition-minded person. So what is it about a fascist that would make them better at adopting new technology? Like, what is the natural flow of that that makes that happen? And so, from a structural viewpoint, anyone with a perspective far outside the mainstream, and this is content neutral, good, bad, neutral, it doesn't matter. If your ideas are far outside the mainstream, you have to use alternative communication methods to get your ideas out, because you're going to be expelled from the mainstream. You're not going to be able to get on professional radio or television. You're going to have to do something like write a blog or create a podcast or something like that. And doing that, like knowing that to get your ideas out, you have to circumvent the mainstream, primes you to then quickly embrace any new communication medium that comes along. So both the progressive left and the far right did this with blogs and podcasts. We all needed ways of circumventing traditional information pipelines. However, there's a huge difference between the left, like this show, which upholds a huge percentage of standard mainstream thought, like democracy is good, while then adding universal healthcare would also be good, you know. The real radicals, those who reject nearly everything about the mainstream, those who reject democracy, want to overthrow and create a Christian nationalist theocracy. There are those who want a fascist dictatorship. Those people are also going to use these other outside the mainstream ways of communicating, blogs, podcasts, etc. Social media came along and they got on that too because they had to. That's the only place that they could find an audience. And so I think to actually demonstrate this, we're not going to talk about fascism, but instead talk about another very far outside the mainstream movement that also had to use outside the mainstream communication methods and got on board with social media and only had success because of it, which is the anti-science movement behind the Make America Healthy Again movement. Because being anti-science is super unpopular. People really like science. And so understanding how the MAHA movement succeeded to the extent that it has kind of requires this understanding of media systems, communication systems, how they work, and why is it that the anti-science perspective gets there before the pro-science does? Why does the fascist get to the new media technology before the pro-democracy perspective does? And that is, I think, what we're clarifying right here. And I had clarified for me, which was extremely helpful. It's, again, part of this natural flow is when essentially public health experts never would have felt the need to go out in front and use new information systems like social media to promote the science that was already well established, well understood, taken as granted in the mainstream. They're only going to do that in response. The anti-science perspective is going to flood the alternative media channels, and there's going to be a gap. There's going to be a lag before anyone realizes that they need to respond. And all of this brings us to this next article, which I'm primarily bringing up just to demonstrate that this person exists. The details are less important, though interesting. But this article from Vox, a public health expert keeps going viral on Instagram for delivering this very simple message. And essentially, they're just going around talking about health science and debunking Make America Healthy Again misinformation at the same time. But this struck me as the natural next step, right? If people like fascists adopt new media faster than mainstream thinking people would, and anti-science people are going to do the same thing, the next natural step in that flow is that eventually people are going to realize, no, we need to take action. We can't ignore it. We can't just let these people have their very corrosive conversations as though they're not going to end up impacting the rest of us. And so I found it very helpful and hopeful knowing that we have clearly hit a tipping point where health experts are realizing we can't just depend on the fact that all the medical journals agree on, such and such facts. We have to get out there and actually engage in the conversation because people are being duped into a world of anti-science medical information that is harming people and enriching those grifters who are profiting from it.
I just want to call out her name. We actually mentioned her on the episode about the brain drain. The influencer that is interviewed in this article is Jessica Nurick, and she is a dietitian. She's PhD. She is involved in research, public health efforts, and whatnot. I mean, she's become like a little bit of a personal hero because when I see her videos, I just think like the time and energy that has to be spent to respond to this stuff. Oh my God. And I'm just so grateful that she's doing it. And that's part of the problem. It's that, for a long time, we've had a collective understanding that science is good and, vaccines are good and, all of this stuff. We took it for granted. And now that it's being torn down, we're in a position that we haven't quite been in before, where we have to actually build a large scale response, direct response to the barrage of misinformation, disinformation out there. And she specifically says in this article, I think what MAHA is really tapped into is this idea that we do have a food system that prioritizes profit over people's health. We do have a healthcare system that largely prioritizes profits, as opposed to most healthcare systems in the world. We pay twice as much as other countries for healthcare, and we have worse outcomes. They really tap into this feeling we all have that our systems are set up for us to fail. Our systems are set up for corporate profits, and they're leaving us behind. And that is the message, right? Like the left has been saying that for a long time. This is not like a new thing, but we've been saying those things while also wanting to uphold science and make sure that it's still part of our public health because we understand the importance of it and that it has changed our society for the better in many, many ways. But there are criticisms, valid criticisms and concerns. And so that's what I think she does super well is just being somewhat compassionate to those who have fallen down the rabbit hole of misinformation while also saying no, you've identified the problem. This has of course been a theme of the last 10 years, right? Identifying the problem is different than identifying the answers, and their answers end up being a grift. Whereas we actually have some answers. We have some policy answers, public health answers. There are things that we can do to make things better for ourselves. And her just repeatedly hitting that note over and over and over again is so necessary right now. We need, 100 of her. And there are others, thankfully. But yeah, like we are in a position, as Jay says, looking way further out where the people with, I can't say that all of them have nefarious intentions. Some of them certainly do. They certainly have money grubbing intentions. And we're in a position right now where we're on the defense. So we have not used the tools of social media and technology to continue to double down and advance on things that we already think are good. Like, why would we? We thought we were all on the same page. Turns out we're not. And so now we're fighting a counter revolution.
Well, and I think in the MAHA Best of the Left episode specifically that we did, I believe it was Dr. Mike that talked about that for so long, doctors viewed getting on social media as like something that would degrade their status. Like it was looked down upon. Whereas, as we see, okay, you didn't get on there, but a bunch of these grifters did. And now there's so much misinformation that you're having to combat that instead of actually just educating people about what's going on. And I do appreciate that because I think if people understood and it was an accessible language, that we would have maybe had some defenses against the MAHA misinformation. But we didn't. And everything that, I don't know about anybody else. When I go to the doctor, I usually do feel overwhelmed unless I actively speak up and say, like, can you simplify that for me? Can you put it in layman's terms? Or because, yeah, a lot of their language isn't accessible. It's people who have gone to school and are super educated and are in that field and deal with that terminology day after day. And it's not for the average person necessary. So I think we, while combating, also need to like be out in front of things and like a little bit of anticipation. I do think, however, it is indicative of the social media, I don't know, attention getting that Dr. Jessica, what was her last name?
Nurek.
Those videos wouldn't be as popular if she wasn't, hitting the MAHA movements. Like I do feel like there's a little bit of being able to use the ridiculousness that is happening or the misinformation that's happening and then providing points off of that. Like she is really educated and she's explained so many things to me and I appreciate her on a personal level. Like I don't know for sure, but I do think some of the attention getting has to do with you're combating something that it does have a lot of viewership.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's the thing is like, she shouldn't need to be this popular, right? She's
Yeah,
popular
right.
because she's combating misinformation, but she should just be like a boring resource of information that when you have a question about your health, if you make the mistake of going on social media to get answers for your health, people like that should be flooding the space so that you can just get like boring, normal health advice and maybe some structural analysis of why we'd be better off with a not for profit healthcare system for everyone. But that's an aside. Yeah. If people like that jumped on social media in 2006 and started talking about science facts and health facts, like, no, like it wouldn't have gone viral. There would have been no need for it. But, maybe people who are looking for their specific ailment would have found what they were looking for instead of grifters.
The Mark Twain quote popped up in my head when we were talking about this. A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is putting its shoes on. And to update that, a lie can travel to everyone instantaneously while we're trying to figure out how to refute that lie. That's what we're kind of dealing with now. And I think there's a human nature aspect of that we do have to talk about, because Jay was talking about, like, if you think of it as like a natural occurrence, well, why is it that a lie can spread so easily? It's because of the novelty of it. The truth is boring. Like Erin was saying, like when you go to a doctor and they're telling you all this stuff, it's like, well, number one, I don't know what you're saying because I didn't go to school for 8 years. So could you dumb that down? Meanwhile, you got RFK or Jillian Michaels or whoever else telling you this really simple, one fun trick that you didn't know, and now it's going to turn your health around. They've got simple answers. They got, it seems like, new answers, even though it's old school snake oil bullshit that they're mostly selling, but it seems new, it's easy, and it's digestible. So that travels so fast because most of us don't have time to do the research to figure out what it is the doctor's saying. Most of us haven't heard any of this stuff before. Like, we don't have the inoculation to this bullshit because none of us are going to be experts in every field. And that's why there's also the simultaneous dismissal of expertise. RFK does that all the time. He's telling you, don't listen to them, the other bad people that think they know stuff. Listen to me, because I have your best interest at heart. Also, buy my program. It's an easier sell. The truth is boring. The truth is usually boring. It's not as fun. Listening to, wacky RFK sell his stuff or whatever he's telling you, it's interesting just because his voice is interesting. Like that, I mean, it's Donald Trump is president partially because he's a weird looking dude who sounds strange. Unfortunately, that shit does draw attention. Meanwhile, a doctor telling you all the things they learned while studying for hours and hours in a boring library, it's not as fun. Yeah. I don't know if to combat that, we need to make the truth fun or entertaining, but that is something that we are going to have to address.
I don't even think it's making it fun and entertaining. I think it's letting people who are actually good with that communication do that. Because I do know there's a lot of fear of, especially if you're employed by a hospital or some other non-private office, or at least a larger scale, like that there would be some backlash or whatever from you being on social media. But I think instead, maybe there should be positions where we funnel people who are, again, good at talking to everyday people. Like not people in the field. I know there's plenty of speakers who go to conferences and, they talk about their research, but just people who are really good at breaking it down and talking about the science. I don't know. Should we do like a Bill Nye of the medical field? Or
Well,
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you bring that up, and that's a really good point. I come from the communications world. Like, it is hard to get people to pay attention to anything, let alone something that's kind of dry, right? And what I was just thinking about is there have been amazing public health campaigns, like ones that people actually paid attention to. And if I had thought about this before we started recording, I would have looked some of them up. But that has worked to some degree, and there are people who are kind of dedicated to the line of work of public health communication, right? But they have not transitioned to the modern social media world in the same way that others have, right? They're still doing billboards and they're probably doing social media, but it's just the style of it really hasn't transformed because it's slower. on that end. It's harder to get approval for things that are flashier or break the mold or, are more in your face, right? Because like at least in our former administrations, being kind of dull and governmental was sort of the whole thing. You didn't want to break that kind of wall. But now we got to break that wall. Like it's to our great detriment that it hasn't been able for valid reasons. Like I think there are legit concerns there, but it has not been able to keep up with what is out there now and the tools that we're using now.
I do worry that the past best of the left episode and the past news cycle, it's probably over now, but the Chorus organization that had some left-wing creators working together to put out a message. If we start doing stuff like that and it becomes corporatized and controlled by some organization, dark money or whatever, that wants to put out a specific message, when the money gets involved, the message gets twisted. And if we're just trying to put out truth, but meanwhile you have to have funding behind it and you have to have a marketing team behind it, what does the message become? Because messaging and truth, they haven't always been friends. So like,
well, that's actually one of the reasons why people like wanted the government communication to stay pretty boring.
Yeah.
Right. That's actually exactly why, because they don't want to be confused or pressured in the sense of like it's turning into propaganda. Right. Like that's what people fear. And that's why there is this dulling when things come from the government. it's a concern. Absolutely.
And that's like use Gavin Newsom as an example. Got super popular over the last month just by sounding like Trump. Meanwhile, he's still Gavin Newsom. And that scares the shit out of me. Like that we're just going to co-opt the style of message as opposed to the substance of message. And in health,
I'm sure some will.
Yeah. In health, I'm sure it's not exactly the same. I'm sure like the message is, hey, don't stop taking vaccines. Maybe stop blaming seed oils for everything that's ever happened in the world. It's harder to corrupt something like that, but it's possible.
I mean, what I thought of with these suggestions was not necessarily like a government agency putting out health content on social media. I thought like there are professionals in the medical field or academic field who have these sort of hybrid roles, right? Like they spend some time doing their research and they do some of their time teaching, and they have these paid positions where it is their job to do multiple things. And one of those things could be making social media. Like that would be pretty great for society if people who are not just knowledgeable, but also adept at doing that sort of thing could do as part of their job so that they're being paid for it, but it is part of their professional capacity to put out good information in a way that is not just the 30 people in their classroom, but is actually reaching people where they're asking their questions.
Yeah. And that does happen more on an organizational level. For instance, when I worked in the rare disease world more intensely, organizations would ask doctors and researchers to do videos for the patient community. And it was a volunteer thing, but it was just like, can you please help articulate what people need to know? We need it to come from you because they are the subject matter experts. And obviously some people are better at that than others, but when you know that there's a group that are pretty good, you can be very effective in communicating what people need to know. And the other thing I just wanted to add here is, so there was a op-ed written by the head of the FDA, and the head of the FDA right now is, yes, a physician, but is also a full-blown MAGA person. And they have been doing and saying things that are, they're just like detrimental to public health in the last few weeks. The op-ed was about how pharmaceutical advertising is terrible for Americans. And I kind of wanted to like scream and throw my phone because of course it is. And the left has been crying that message for decades. Pharmaceutical ads became legal on TV and such in the late 90s, but it had started before that under Reagan in publications. And this is something that could be one of those like unifying things, right? But then I started thinking, I was like, why didn't we do it? Why didn't a Democratic administration stop this from being allowed? And, like there's lots of answers, but the biggest one that comes to mind is money, money in politics. So, like we have also dropped the ball, is my point. Like we have to adapt and get ahead of things and fix our communication and, do our best to get people back on the same page. And at the same time, we have to recognize that we really let it slide. And the things that people were most angry about, Democratic administrations did not successfully address those issues. And so it left a wide open gulf for people like the MAHA people to fill. And that is part of the reason we are where we are.
I mean, arguably, we are now living in Trump's populist America, but right up until recently, we were living in Reagan's America.
Yeah.
I mean, he more than anyone else, it wasn't a clear-cut line, but he more than anyone else ushered in neoliberalism, and even the Democrats who came after were still sort of constrained by the Overton window that Reagan and neoliberalism created. And so regulating pharmaceutical ads was like not politically possible. It should have been. We would have all been in favor of it, but it just wasn't something that they felt they could tackle because of the dynamics of the era in which they were in power. And I mean, Clinton sort of like cheered on the neoliberalism for sure. He triangulated his way to ending 12 years of Republican rule at that point. And, we don't need to rehash, but that's how we got stuck in that mindset for so long. And what we said during the threat of the Trump years before he was elected, either the first or the second time, was we're turning away from the old ways. We're turning away from neoliberalism. We are turning towards populism. But is it going to be the real good one that points out that billionaires are robbing you blind? Or is going to be the fake bullshit one that makes you angry about immigrants, even though they're not the cause of the problems you're experiencing? And we all know which direction we went, but that turn was inevitable. Which way that turn would go was not inevitable. And we are where we are. But I mean, it is not surprising in that context to understand that a bullshit populist government would sort of at least faint towards those types of things, like getting rid of pharmaceutical ads. Like, that is not surprising because that's exactly what a Bernie Sanders administration could have said too, and that wouldn't have been surprising. It's very unlikely Trump would follow through on it because that would be going against corporations. And because his populism is bullshit, it's very unlikely to happen. So last thing here, there were a couple of things we're not going to have time to get to today. There was an interview in Current Affairs, headline, "She exposed the insurance industry's worst behavior. Now they're coming after her." And this is about another doctor who has been going viral on social media for outing insurance companies for the absolute horrible policies that they have and the detrimental effects they have on people's health. And then also the New York Times had a mini documentary video called "How MAHA Influencers Spread Conspiracies About Healthcare," which had some sort of hopeful glimmers about how at least some people are able to extract themselves from the conspiracy minded way of approaching healthcare. And it sort of clarifies that like people really do want the truth, particularly when it comes to their health. They don't want to be duped. And so if you can present real information right next to bullshit conspiracies, people will gravitate towards the stuff where people can cite their sources and prove what they are saying is true and articulate the logic and the reasoning behind what they're saying. So as more and more people have that realization that no, getting on social media is not detrimental to your personal reputation and it could actually be good for society, we may be able to bend that curve a little bit. And this is sort of what I wanted to highlight broadly which is that although it is as predictable as the seasons that demagogues and scammers will use new mediums of communication to play on people's fears and anger for their own power and profit, it's also predictable that the good guys will react. And we are actually seeing that happen. So it's dispiriting at first because it seems like the bad actors are monopolizing the zone, they're going unanswered, but it is part of the nature of new mediums for those who uphold fundamental truths that seem so simple that they don't need to be said, like democracy is good and science is the best way to gain new information. Those people are always going to end up playing catch up. But, they do catch up. We do catch up. And it is through intention and action that it happens. It's not natural in that you can sit back and expect for something to happen, but it is natural in that there are people who cannot help but take action. They cannot help but see a problem and try to address it. And the last thing I'll leave you with is all of this reminded me of, one of Mr. Rogers' best points is about how there's always bad things that happen and there are always the people who react to it.
When I was a little boy and something bad happened in the news, my mother would tell me to look for the helpers. You'll always find people helping, she'd say. And I've found that that's true. In fact, it's one of the best things about our wonderful world.
Did we solve it?
Mr. Rogers' quote solves it all.
I was about to
I
say
was just going to say.
a great motto of masculinity right there. Yeah.
100%.
Yep. And remember, maybe he didn't feel the need to add more context there, but the helper might be you. It's not always just outside of yourself. The helper might be you.
I think he did say that in front of Congress at one point.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I think this was after 9/11. Yeah.
All right. If you have any thoughts on how to be a helper or encourage others to help, you can send us a message at 202-999-3991 or send an email to j@bestofleft.com or find us on Signal at bestofleft.01. Thanks for listening. And remember that this is all really happening. So continue to be decent, act like what you do and say matters, and do what matters most.